Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. This is Chris Medina with Captain Medina Productions presenting a writing workshop on poetry. This is part of the Wabasha Main Street Artist Program for 2020, which is sponsored by the Wabasha Main Street Foundation and Rethos and Springboard for the Arts. And this is through a grant I received to provide some artistic instruction and encouragement and vision in our community in a project that I call Dramatic Expressions on the River, Drama, Poetry, and Storytelling. And so this project is all about creating original work with the purpose of celebrating the Mississippi River and our community of Wabasha and Kellogg in this great state of Minnesota. And so this first workshop is all about poetry and the different styles of poetry and ways that you can use language in your poems. I'm going to be making two videos. This first one is just on the different styles and elements of poetry. The second one will be specific types of poetry and instruction and suggestions on how you could use those types of poetry in this writing project. Again, this writing project is a community event, so I'm looking for participants to join me by writing some poems, stories, and dramatic plays or dramatic scripts that can be turned into performances in the month of August. So in the month of July, we're learning about writing. So without further ado, I want to talk about poetry today in this video. So what is poetry? Poetry is a type of literature that expresses ideas, feelings, or tells a story in a specific form. Usually poetry is concerned or made up with lines and stanzas. So poetic form is something we should talk about. Poetic form is the appearance of the words on the page. A line is a group of words together on a line of a poem, and a stanza is a group of lines arranged together. So an example here by Emily Dickinson: a word is dead when it is said, some say. I say it just begins to live that day. So we have 6 lines of poetry here and 2 stanzas. Very short poem. Again, they're written in lines, and usually a group of lines is called a stanza, so it's like a paragraph of poetry. And so this poem by Eleanor Farjeon, March, has 2 stanzas. March, a blue jay, a blue day, a blue jay, and a good beginning. One crow, melting snow, spring's winning. So a lot of times poetry is just your thoughts about a subject or a topic, which would be your title. Poems have rhymes, but not all poems rhyme. So don't let this deter you from writing poetry if you don't like rhymes. If you do like rhymes, this is a great way to start writing poetry. So here's an example of some rhyming words: hat, cat, brat, fat, mat, sat. Shel Silverstein wrote a great poem. It's called My Beard. My beard grows to my toes. I never wears no clothes. I wraps my hair around my bear, and down the road I goes. So I've highlighted or color-coded the rhyming words, so grows, toes, clothes, and goes all rhyme. Notice how in one line we have 2 words that rhyme, and that's what's called an internal rhyme. The other words are all what we call end rhyme, so the last word on each line. All right, I'm going to challenge you to write your first rhyming poem by using note cards or post-it notes. And what you can do is find 8 note cards. And if you have different colored note cards, that's great. If you don't have different colored note cards, you're going to letter those note cards. So we have 4 different colors or 4 different note cards. 2 of those note cards, you're going to put the letter A up in the upper right-hand corner. 2 of those note cards, you're going to have the letter B. 2 of those note cards, you're going to have the letter C. And 2 of those note cards, you're going to have the letter D. If you have another set of note cards, you can have the letter E. But we'll just do A, B, C, D for now. So what you can do with this is you're going to take your A cards, the ones that have A in the corner, and on the bottom of each card, you're going to write a word, just one word. So let's say on your first A card, you write the word hat. Hat. On your other A card, you need to rhyme with that word. So we could choose cat, brat, bat, fat, mat, sat. Make sense? Now set that aside. Next, go to your B cards. On the B card, you're going to pick a different word that does not rhyme with hat or cat or brat. So a different word, like hair, for example. You're going to write that word down in the bottom corner, hair. And the next card, the other B cards, are going to rhyme with hair. So it might be share, pear, bear, nair. Pick a word. All right, now moving on to your C card, you're going to pick a word that is not hat or hair, something that is a different rhyme. So let's say you maybe say stick. So you write stick on one and trick on the other. Same thing with D. You're going to pick another word that doesn't rhyme with the other words that you've picked. So let's say we say time. So time on one card and dime on the other. All right, now you have 4 sets of rhymes. What your next step would be in this process is actually to write a line on each card that ends with the word that you wrote down on the card. So for example, if your A card has the word toes, you might write, my beard grows to my toes. And then on your other card, that is the same letter A, you might write another word like goes. And so that card would say, and down the road I goes. Make sense? So you would do that for all your cards, and then you have a poem that we can put together. And so poems can be put together in patterns. So a couplet is 2 lines in a stanza. Remember, a stanza is a paragraph. A triplet is 3 lines in a stanza. A quatrain is 4 lines in a stanza, and so on and so forth. So we could put our AA cards together and our BB cards together, and then read that poem, that stanza of our poem, out loud, so that it would say, I went to the store today and bought a blue jay. What did I find? That's my B card. Something on my mind. That's my other B card. Make sense? So this is one way that you can organize your thoughts into a rhyming pattern. All right, let's move on a little bit. So here's an example that I used before we move on, sorry. A, B, C, D, E. So you could have A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, E, A, B, C, D, E, E, A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D, E, E. So these are all ways you can organize your cards into patterns to make your poem. Rhythm is another element of poetry. So it's like the beat of your poem, a musical feel to your poem, tapping out your poem, giving sort of a beat and a rhythm in your poem is called meter. So meter can be a series of unstressed and stressed syllables. A good example of that is this poem called The Pickety Fence by David McCord. And notice how this poem has a little bit of a rhythm. The pickety fence, give it a lick, it's the pickety fence. Give it a lick, it's the clickety fence. Give it a lick, it's a lickety fence. Give it a lick, give it a lick, give it a lick. With a rickety stick, pickety, 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 pick. So notice how there's repetition in this poem, and it has a sort of tickety, 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 tickety kind of sound. So a lot of times when writing poetry, you want to sound them out using rhythm. You can also have a slow rhythm that kind of flows, and this is a poem about the night. It's called Where Are You Now? When the night begins to fall and the sky begins to glow. You look up and see the tall city of lights begin to grow. In rows and little golden squares the lights come out, first here, then there, behind the window panes, as though a million billion bees had built their golden hives and honeycombs above you in the air. So kind of a slow rhythm. So think about that when you write your poetry. Think about how the rhythm could work, how the rhyme could work. And then we're going to move on to how it sounds. So these are techniques that you could use in your writing to create a little more poetic element. So alliteration is the repetition of the initial letter or sound in two or more words in a line. It's kind of like a tongue twister. How much dew would a dewdrop drop if a dewdrop did drop dew? So you could repeat the letter D in your line of poetry. It's a fun way to incorporate poems or incorporate words. Another sound device is assonance. And assonance is the repetition of vowel sounds in a poem. So what I suggest you do if you want to play with assonance is that you pick a sound, a vowel sound that you quite enjoy. It might be A, E, I, O. It could be the ow sound, ow, oi. There's combinations of vowels, E, O, A. And you're going to write down words that have that sound. So I picked the word or the sound I. And so I wrote down 20 words that had the I sound in them. And this is where I came up with my poem called My Chai. My chai. Sometimes I cry in my chai. Sometimes it ignites my might like a fight in the bright light. My blithe sigh is the kite of my sight. My chai is my bite. My chai makes me fly in the sky. Yet sometimes I cry in my chai. So notice how the sound, the repeating of the sound really helps the mood and the tone of the poem, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Consonants. This is a near rhyme. So consonants is a close juxtaposition of sound. So I chose the ST sound as in st, or st, past, blast. So this is Steve's sadness. My blast from the past is like a stencil of unstable stigmas, stapled to my last stare in the state of waste. Boats swim in my steeple of thoughts. The mast of my mind is standing on the stairs, ready to cast a taste of the past, like a sty in the stare of my eye. So using consonants like assonance is a way of repeating sounds in your poem. Another sound device is onomatopoeia. So these are words that sound like what they mean. Growl, hiss, pop, boom, crack. Some example of onomatopoeia here. Shel Silverstein has this poem. Let's have one day for the girls and boyses, when you can make the grandest noises. Screech, scream, holler, and yell. Buzz a buzzer and clang a bell. Sneeze and hiccup, whistle, shout. Laugh until your lungs wear out. Toot a whistle, kick a can. Bang a spoon against a pan. Sing, yodel, bellow, hum. Blow a horn, beat a drum. Rattle a window, slam a door. Scrape a rake across the floor. So lots of onomatopoeia words in this poem. Here's a couple other examples of onomatopoeia poems. Cafeteria. Boom went the food trays. Clap, clap goes the teacher. Rip went the plastic bag. Munch, munch goes the students. Slurp went the straws. Whisper is what half the kids are in the room are doing. Crunch, crunch go the candy bars. Pizza parlor. Wee, wee goes the dough in the air. Splat, splat goes the sauce on the dough. Sprinkle, sprinkle goes the cheese on the sauce. Flop, flop goes the pepperoni on the cheese. Sizzle, sizzle goes the pizza as it cooks. So onomatopoeia is a fun way to play with words. Next we have some other figures of speech. First we have the simile, which is a comparison between two usually unrelated things using the word like or as. Joe is as hungry as a bear. In the morning, Ray is like an angry lion. And then we have metaphors, which are comparisons between two unrelated things. Lenny is a snake. Ginny is a mouse when it comes to standing up for herself. So a metaphor is different from a simile in that it does not use like or as. Otherwise, they're both comparisons. And they're great things to use in poetry. Some other things that you could use: the hyperbole, an exaggeration for the sake of emphasis. I may sweat to death. The blood bank needs a river of blood. I'm so hungry I could eat a house. Those are all examples of hyperbole. And then we have personification, taking something that is inanimate, an animal or an idea, and giving it human characteristics. Like the sun stretched its lazily fingers over the valley. A great thing to use in poetry. Imagery is using words to create a picture in the reader's mind. So using the five senses to really heighten our awareness of the images that we might see and feel and hear and taste in a certain location. Allusion is a reference to another piece of literature or history. So she hath Diane's wit is an allusion to mythology. You could have Wabasha allusions in your poems, where you're alluding to things that maybe only people in Wabasha would know about. So, like Speedo Man, for example. That's an allusion. Moving on. Mood is the atmosphere, emotion in a poem created by the poet. Happy, angry, silly, sad. So your mood is how you feel about the poem. So you could have a happy mood poem like this Barefoot Days by Rachel Field, which has really happy words like, and on a summer morning, oh, on a summer morning, the birds go by up the sunny slopes of air, and each rose has a butterfly or a golden bee to wear. So very happy mood. Or you could have kind of a sad mood, which is this poem by Langston Hughes called Poem. I loved my friend, he went away from me. There's nothing more to say. The poem ends soft as it began. I loved my friend. So just a simple thought. Diction is where it refers to language of the poem and how each word is chosen to convey a precise meaning. So poets are very deliberate in choosing different words. So picking your words for certain connotations, certain meanings. Those are all things to consider when writing a poem. So here you go. This is T.S. Eliot's Burn Norton. Words strain and crack sometimes break under the burden, under the tension, slip, slide, perish, decay with imprecision, will not stay in place, will not stay still. So there's words like burden, strain, decay, harsh, perish. Those are all kind of harsh sounding words. So it gives you a sense of diction. And then we have tone, which is the attitude the writer takes towards a subject. So you can have a tone that is a political tone. You could have a romantic tone, a silly tone. So mood is like the feeling, but the tone is just like the approach, your attitude on how you feel about that subject. So kind of similar, yet different. And then you have free verse poetry, which is poetry that follows no rules. Just about anything goes. So it doesn't mean that we don't use devices and rhyming and things like that. It just means that we don't follow traditional conventions such as punctuation, capitalization, rhyme schemes, rhythm, meter. You just kind of let your words come out. So the example here by T.S. Eliot, this poem, The Fog Comes. The fog comes on little cat feet. It sits looking over harbor and city on silent haunches and then moves on. So free verse is, no rhyme, no rhythm, no meters, just basically putting your words out there. So these are all different styles of poetry or different elements of poetry that you could consider when writing poems for this project. My next video will actually go into detail on some of the specific types of poetry that you might explore. So check out that video. I hope you learned something about poetry today. I hope that you will try some of these techniques in the poems that you're writing, and I look forward to seeing what you create. This has been Captain Medina from Captain Medina Productions.